Okay, so thank you for watching our web programming interface. So for today's lecture, I'm moving on. So we'll introduce as well know for the web programming for the whole architecture. Okay, so we are building our front end, that means our website. Even sometimes when we describe front end, actually we can classify as called a front end and front back end, because what you are doing using the React.js, everything will be like module space, like functional components. Okay, so all this not really present or what you can see directly. Okay, and then for the really working on the back end, we mentioned about will be related to our server side API server. Something like we need to work on the Ubuntu system and then handle the request. Okay, and then how can we store the data on the server side? Okay, so all this. And the example we are using right here, or the modules we use, will be called the Happy.js. Okay, so I'm going to introduce what is Happy.js, and that's probably you can use for your project. And of course, maybe for the Happy.js is not like popular. Maybe sometimes when you hear called the Express.js, you are totally welcome. Like if say you want to use Express.js for your example, or even you want to use it for your project, totally welcome, like totally fine. So I just would like to take in one of the example. Because I put it like the structure is pretty clear enough. So that's why I choose Happy.js as our teaching example, but you have feel free, okay, to choose your own. So what's Happy.js? Happy.js is a really powerful and flexible Node.js framework, so which can use for building applications and services. And when we decide this one to be, we call it rich like framework for building APIs. And also it's focused on the configuration-driven development. Okay, so I will show you how going to like install it and then create our first Happy.js API. And you can run it as a local host, and when you put it on your server, then we need to configure it. Okay, we need to set the firewall. Also, we need to install the Nginx. This is what I'm going to cover in the later of the lecture. Okay. So the reason we're choosing the Happy.js is mainly targeted because it's robust pop-in system, and also it has like built-in support for input validation. It can support caching, and also it's pretty extendable and have a module, so we can use. So in case if you need to do some validation, you can just install the modules firmware, then we can use it. Okay, and of course, when you are learning, then we will go to use. Okay, I recommend you can implement, so make your projects the more secure. Okay, so as well as we have the rich pop-in system, so we can enable certain modular development and then the code reviews. So if you declare certain function, okay, you're always feel free to reuse them. And then it's called the configuration-driven development. So if you need to use certain configuration, you just declare it. Okay, so just enable it, so you can maybe create some route or work with certain plugins. And also it built-in of the GUI, so GLI is for the input validation. It's a schema-based validation, so we can check like if you need to validate if there's an email, phone number, address, or this they're possible. And of course, two more was caching. Caching is important because if you want to serve API, okay, sometimes you are not always like access to the database. You're not always like access to other piece of data. Then caching strategy, it will be more important. Okay, and the logging, we have different loggings. It can support different type of logging. Like you can upload to anywhere, text file or anything format, and it's okay. At least when you if you use the React.js, so I assume that of you have a Node.js, but because we need to install the API, create the API set for it, right? So we need to host on the server side. So if you using like EC2, or if you're testing with your VM, okay, with your virtual machine, or if you test on your local host, then you should be fine. You should have a Node.js. So that's what you need to like if you have a Node.js and npm. installed it. So how can you validate? Let me check. Okay, right here. So in case if you not yet install it, then you can just like search how to install the Node.js. So assume of you are able to do it because you already submit your first assignment. So assume, and how can we install it? So let me make it to half. Right now I already in my directory folder, so I can try to start the project. So we always initialize. So you can just assume I just by default I'm not changing any content. So I just pass the parameter. Okay, by default yes, and then what we need to do just like using npm equal the node module package manager to install the happy. So we can add happy and slash happy. Okay, and then I will save it to the package.json file because it's a good habit. Let me, after the installation, I will show you. Okay, my temporary file and v6 right here. You will see the package.json file. Okay, so without save, then the dependence is not exist. And after I put the save, so you see the happy modules is exists and then it comes from the version. Okay, so in case I copy this package.json to or upload to Git or share to others, so you can execute npm install, then it will grab the package.json and install also dependency. Okay, that's like how it works. So after we create the happy.js, then we are able to start our first server. Okay, so here's how it looks like. Here's the sample source code. So you can start with like request the happy.js and start the server. And this one I would like to show you the website. So this one is from the happy.js. Once you search it, happy.js, happy.div, and one of the habits as a developer, we always need to look at document. Sometimes it change. So it's a good habit. Right now, let me copy. Sometimes when you see my the file shared to you, we have different format. Of course, different way depends on style or how we use. Then we will have different way to show our code. And right here, I will save it as a index.js. Okay. And it's a pretty similar. So I can go through the code. So right here, we try to request them import the happy.js modules, and we will execute our server running on our local host of 3000. Then maybe you will have a question like then how can we fast forward like working with like maybe some domains? Here will be covered in our later of our lab, okay, in the lecture. Because like before the midterm, I try to go through the all required skills or knowledge you basically need to have. So after the spring break, then you may start to prepare for a project. Okay. For the project, I will go into details and talk about it later. But right here, I will talk. Okay. And in this part, we start our first route. So you see the structure start from the first server route, and for the method, we talk about for the method we include like get, hold, post, and then put or delete. Okay, so we can declare the path. Also, the handler is like once we have the request as a basic. So you see the request, and we have a given a return message. If as a API server we are not returning a message, sometimes we have a JSON format data leads. Okay, including like this, and we have a wait. So here would be a synchronized function, and they're waiting for the return. Okay. And after the server start, it's okay. And also once you start server, we have a console log showing, okay, server is running. So right now I would like to show you copy from the sample code, and then I would like to execute. You can either using npm start like this. If you have the default path, so default path because I'm using index.js. But if you have another name, then you need to change it. So I can use like npm start here. And sometimes we are npm, but let me try. Okay. So testing script is not existing. Okay. Let me try again. Okay, it's not running. Then maybe I just start with the npm index. Okay, so once you receive the message, it's called the localhost 3000 is exists. And let me open it. Okay, when you see here when there's nothing found, but I try to check. Okay, as the first line, because when there's nothing, because we don't have any route, right? Then how can we give our first route? Oh, I will copy this one, server route, and copy and put it right here. So here's the difference like by default. Okay. Let's save it. Start the server. And this time, let's like refresh because I start the server and then by default, you will see you will receive a message. Okay. Of course, we can change the name to like for testing. I always like as a good habit, I like to create the testing API. Okay. So I want to test if it exists. Okay. So maybe I create two. Sometimes like for by default, so I just like return nothing. Okay, maybe I just say okay, it's root. Okay, so this will be the root directory, and then if I want to test the API, then I would. So every time once you change your configuration content, remember to restart your script. Okay, we execute it, and you see right now it's a root, and right now I change my directory to test the API. So you see right now it changed. So this is how the Happy.js like works. Okay, including you can pass maybe some dynamic routers and also the path parameter. Okay, but right here in this moment you just need to know, okay, there we have different parameter including the queries parameter, request payload, so we can send the content. Let's say if your website requires you to sign in from the account, then after you type your maybe the username or email address, and sometimes you can use phone number, right? And also the password. So when the user input all this information, then how can you send it, transmit this to your API server? Then this is what we need to do. And also we have other plugins we're going to use later, or we can like we have our own customized plugin too. Okay. But in this moment, you just need to know what can we use. And of course, later you can define the authentication. So we can have different strategy can be used, and also for caching, as well we say, we can configure. But for today, just more like introduction of the Happy.js. So if you need to like check because for your coming assignment, so you need to do it, but I will recommend you to take a look, look at the by default. So you can see right here, hello world, so the structure, so you can like copy the default some sample code, so copy and try to execute on your server. And after that, you will see if you were interested, then you can look at some example right here. What's the authentication? What's the possible? How can we define it? Or we talk about the caching cookies for login. So all this, okay. But of course, I will cover in our lecture later. And for next part, like after we talk about the Happy.js, and then we move on to about the MongoDB. So when we working on the MongoDB, you can check from the website. We are going to download the MongoDB community server. Okay. Of course, in different platform, we have different way to install it. If you install it on the maybe Amazon, okay, AWS server, so maybe we can install it. And we have different way, like maybe some command line to install it. So just let you know, and you can try to install it on your server. If you're running on your local host, also, of course, you can download it. And with a different way to install it, I can show you. Okay, let's say Ubuntu. Latest 24 install MongoDB. Okay. So committee, or sometimes we have the other website showing. And here's the link. You can search like right now the latest version will be the 8.0, like version 8. And what you need to do, like you need to update, install the requirement to get the public key, the GPG key. Okay, so after you get the GPG key and then save the source list to your server, to your Ubuntu source list. So after you add it to your source list, then you can use the apt-get update. After update, then you can use a command line like apt-get install the MongoDB-org. So then you can install the MongoDB. In the later lecture, also I will use one lecture to teach you how to use the MongoDB. In this moment, if you are able to compete by yourself, then of course you can like prepare it earlier. But in this moment, I'm just try to introduce like two things. We call it backend. So we try to build the API server using the Happy.js, and then connect with our database will be the MongoDB, the NoSQL. Okay, so here's the two things you need to install and make it be ready. Okay, so you have coming VA, and then we have the our spring break. Okay, so after spring break, you have some time. Also, I just let you know earlier the progress, because I will give you a pretty short quiz, or you can treat it as a midterm. So we have no class in week like skip. So no week 9 and then week 10 coming back. So that one that week will be I can call it as a midterm. So your limited time. So it will be cover all these basic knowledge. They're all multiple choice. Okay, and just if you follow a step, then it won't be complicated. Okay, that question pretty straightforward. So I just help you to like remember or recap the knowledge. Okay, and for the prerequisite right here, at least like some version you need to new like at least will be like 20 or later. So of course we'll stay on the latest version, will be like 24, and make sure you already install your Node.js npm. Okay, and later I will introduce like some intro idea about JS and then the MongoDB for the MongoDB. So after we create everything, then we need to connect to the MongoDB server. So right here, we can use the npm install. This time we will install the MongoDB. So if you are installing together, then you can put a Happy.js and MongoDB install them in the same time. But this I try to show you I install it separately. Okay. So after I install, then I can use the MongoDB shell. And if you install it, you can use the Mongo message. And then here's some command line can showing you, okay, you can use the use function to choose your database. And if this is your first time to using the NoSQL MongoDB, then you can use the DB. After you choose the database, you can use the create collection. So assign a name to your collection. You can use it like maybe CSCI 380 or week 6 like this, or week 7. And if you want to insert a sample data, you can like use the command. In the later lecture, I will prepare one lecture to teach you like more details. So I can like read, update, create, or delete the content. And for login, maybe let's start with like testing login or some like string. So you can define, so with a curly bracket. So we give in the name, okay, and then the value, okay, the key and the value, okay. So the format would be like this. If you try to the value string format, give a quotation, have a quote right here, okay. And for number, you can just input the number. So it will be like this. And after you're able to create all these things, you get a feedback. So when you connect to a server, so on a server, then we can test how to I know maybe not all of you are able to follow all these steps. So in the week 8, I will go through the lecture and then recap a little bit about what we're going to do. So here would be the example. So after you create the URL, connect to your server, then the whole structure will be like if you try to post the data to your server, save it, then your API server will receive. You will see this one is the post. Either you can use called the Postman, or you can download the Postman to test your API server. Postman. Okay. Here will be the called the Postman, so you can download it. So they have free version, and you can connect to your API server and test it. Like how can it comes with the get method or post or delete post, so you can test all these methods. Okay, so that's what you need to install, and you can test your API server if it's working. And for the more details, we can always refer to the tutorial, okay, or the documents on the official website. So one of the habits is try to read the official website. Okay. And then after I introduce like this part, I would like to start. Another one is like if you start to use the npm create project, you realize one thing is it shows depreciation. So that's why I try to prepare another slides. So here will be another slides. So I would like to introduce the React.js one more time. So you know it's a component-based architecture. We try to create a virtual DOM. And actually there's a new update. Okay, so we call the React 18 and beyond. So we have the automatic like batching, also concurrent re-rendering, also suspense for the data fetching. So all this, I already upload some sample code, so share so you can read it. And then we also have a called a server-side rendering SSR. So the React server components, and also they have the React hooks. So as well we say use state, use effect, or the use reducer, or this. You can use the use state to save some variables, right? So you know assign a value, get a value, and then use effect. So if we need to preload certain content or fetch the data from our API server. So when you know after you create a web page, then we need to post or get the data from our API server. Then we can use effect, and also the React concurrent model mode, so we can allow the React to render more efficiently. Okay, so it tried to improve some user experience. So prioritizing the updates and slightly more. So for the automatic batching, so the React batches have a multiple stage update. So into the single render, so it can be improving the performance for the concurrent rendering. So it allows React to pause the work and come back to it later. So it can ensure the UI stays like responsive. Is a reason. Also the suspense for the data fetching. So it can simplify some like data loading with the some suspense, or we call the lazy loading. So we don't, so it can make the loading more smooth and loading stage or code speeding. So I already share some sample code. So you like if you download the React.js, I already upload all the related. So let's say for the suspense. So this how we like it's still loading. Okay, let me build the network internet connection. So I can sometimes I can show the code. So once you download, then you can look at the source code. And as the same, we have using is the functional components. It just make it more simple and more concise. Okay, so and we try to use the hooks for the state and life cycle methods. You see, so it's a modern approach we are using one nowadays. Instead of using the class, we are using the functional. Okay, and for the class component, we say that there is more like older style they're using, so it can still be used, but it's more like phased out in the favor of usage is changing. And for the hooks, we have different type of hooks. We have use state, so we can manage the state in the functional components, use effect. So we try to handle some like side effects like data fetching, so we can use. And of course, we can integrate with other modules later, like we can install to like fetch and get the data. So after we implement the API server, then I will show you more modules, like other modules we can use and reduce it. So we can use alternative like to use the use state to complex state logic, and also we can use context, so we can share the global state across the component. If you need to share some verbal, like some content globally, we can use it and use the transition. So it's a new hook. So this one is a new one. So it can help us to manage the control bit efficiently. Okay. To set up, you will see it's like it changed. So remember, so if you need to create your new React project, you need to change it. Okay. So I would like to show you right here. We are not using npm create app anymore, but we will change the format to this one. So let me change it side by side. And let's say I want to create let me create a new one. So it's called the bit. Okay. So right now we are not supporting it's like depreciated. So we need to create a new one. So I can npm create. Okay, let me change it latest, and I create a v6 lab. Okay, and then I will say that as a template React and process. Yes. Okay. The right now I using the framework. Right now I still using the React, and I'm not using the you see the TypeScript. We are not using the TypeScript, and I just using the JavaScript in this moment. Okay. Of course, if we later we will create called the router, and we are going to use. So this time I'll show you we can use the router, and then yes, process that will install it. Okay. Why not in this moment? I do not need to initialize a new Git. Okay, so install the dependency with npm. Yes, so I'm going to install all the required npm. So you see the format it changed, and because what you learn compared with other maybe compare with the maybe in the fall semester, so it just like release out, so depreciate. So we are not using npx like to create our React project anymore. So we have something new. So always we cannot like stay on the same or like what we learn in the class. Okay, because in the industry, all this firmware they all like updating sometimes based on the need of the market, or sometimes when the new skills are required or some new firmware release, then we will change. Okay, so that's what I say. So during our course, like in this spring lecture class, then we have to like pick up something new. Okay, immediately instead of learning something or depreciate, then we have to pick up something new. Okay, and then it's ready. Let me cd and change. So it's ready. Since I already started them, then let me try to wondering maybe it's not supporting. So let me run. Try to run it as a local host. Okay. So it's a React router, and then we have some documents. So it's the same page. Anything you need learned before, we need to slightly jot it down. And if you are the student, you say, okay, I'm not really good at like pick up some new logic. Of course, you're feel free to stay on the using the npx React like to create. If you're thinking you're okay to pick up a new one, then I would recommend to switch. Okay, and also we have the called the router app. It looks like different. Of course, we can start with the basic, because this one I just showing example. It could be a router. We can stay with the basic. You can choose the called JavaScript. Okay, and it will look more similar to our React JS like as a basic. Here just an example. How can we install it? Okay, so if you're interested, then you can switch to this one. And we do have more like React samples. Actually, there's some of them already covered in our previous lecture talk about the React.js. So if we need to have like contact components using the use state, if you remember, there's some source code share. So we use the use state to initialize the current state, and then use effect to update the document title every time, and the can't change. So it's like, and then for suspense, you see the code. So it allow the component after you download code and see it, then you will see, and it will allow the component to wait for the data before we render it. Okay, so it's the good way, because if we need to getting the data from the API server, but it takes maybe 1 second. And sometimes if we are not suspended, then you will see the empty content, right? And then we have the lazy loading. So we only import those components when needed. Okay, so dynamically, so you don't have to load everything. That's why it can help to improve the efficiency and reduce the resources. Okay. And we have the React lazy. So it's called the dynamic import from the lazy component. So if we are defined like as a lazy, then we don't have to load it in when even we are not using it. Okay. And then suspend also display a fallback. So as loading message where the component being fetched. So it's how it looks like. And also we have the state management where we reduce, and then it continues to be a solid options for the state management. And also it has been evolving. So we have the RTK, the reduced state of keep. So it can simplify the reduced logic. Okay, and we have the new API comes called the create lines, also create asynchron. Okay, so we have the query for data fetching. So here is slightly changed, and also the router. So we can allow like for the client-side navigation in a single page application. Okay, so this one is the example I will show you how can we be using the router. And when we move on, we have the style in React, so will be the same. So we have the CSS in JS or the style components. So we can import as CSS modules like the scope style or style components like inside, or Tailwind CSS or utility first classes. All this can be supported. And for testing, so it can just let you know later by the end of our lecture, I will tell you like how can we do the unit test. It's not a main focus, because for our web programming, we try to cover different skills like different framework. So it's pretty rush. Okay, maybe you cannot master one like actually same like Node.js, but you cannot master everything. Even for the like job opening right now, so they have something for front-end, React.js, and back-end, like for building the API server, or something like really handle the database. But for this course, you have to learn everything, because you cannot ignore any of one part. You cannot complete the whole project. So that's why. And for the React testing library, so it can encourage the testing component, the way to interact with them. So it's easier to check it. And also we have called the memorization last part. So it can like let a performance like optimized. Okay, we have called the memo. So it is used for the components memorization, use it, and also use callback. So we can prevent some unnecessary renders. Like we can use a callback and try to use the dynamic import for the React lazy, so it can load dynamically when we need it. Okay, that's the overall. It's another slide. Introduce a new like the after the React JS like depreciate from the npx. Is another new way to install it. Okay, so you may try and build your own project. And that's it for this lab, and thank you.